Kurtop here, and these are 100 ancient technologies that were ahead of their time. Memorial marks on the bricks of history. The Mehrangarh Fort in Jodhpur is one of the most majestic structures in India, but its beauty hides dark pages of history. On the inner gate of Loha Pole, 15 imprints of women's hands are still visible, silent witnesses to the tragic tradition of sati. Sati is an ancient Hindu ritual according to which widows were supposed to burn on the funeral pyre of their husbands. Sometimes women did this voluntarily, but more often they were forced. This practice was officially banned by the British in 1829, but in India it continued until the 20th century. In 1843, after the death of Maharaja Man Singh, his wives left handprints on the wall before stepping into the fire. However, this is not the only case in the history of the fort. In 1731, 6 wives and 58 concubines of Maharaja Ajit Singh also committed suicide in the flames. Tragedies have been going on since the fort's foundation. In the 15th century, Saint Chidyawale Baba cursed Rao Yoda, saying his land would suffer from perpetual drought. To lift the curse, the king ordered a resident of Meghwal, Rajaram, to be walled up alive within the fort's walls. But the curse still seems to be in effect. Maharajas have died here, tourists have fallen, and in 2008, hundreds were killed or injured during a stampede at the Chamunda Devi temple. Artifacts in a grave. When I first saw this find, I had a feeling that someone had deliberately planted artifacts there. It looked so implausible. A burial from World War II, in Poland, in the Tukola forest. Everything is standard. The remains of a German uniform, equipment, a token, but next to the body are stone tools from the Mesolithic era, Neolithic ceramics, and Roman coins. Real, verified, not a fake. I tried for a long time to understand how this is officially explained. There is only one version. They say it's a coincidence. It just so happened that ancient tribes used to live in this place, and the soldier died right there. Well, yes, of course, a coincidence. Just like the fact that this place had been an area of interest for Nazi archaeological intelligence since the beginning of the war. They were obsessed with ancient civilizations, not just an interest, but a real mania. The Ananurba sent expeditions to Tibet, Iran, Africa, but in Europe they also actively sought confirmation of their theory that the Aryans were not just a people, but the heirs of an ancient world empire. And now, in one grave, there is an SS man and objects that are 2,000 years old. I can't help but think, what if this is not a coincidence? What if it was part of some program? Testing, moving artifacts, or even guarding? The Nazis attached ritual significance to objects of the past. They believed that ancient artifacts were keys, not to history, to power. Perhaps this soldier did not die by accident. Perhaps he died because of what he was guarding. Stationary underwater objects. There are many stationary anomalous objects hidden in the oceans that still remain a mystery to scientists. Even if we put aside myths such as the legends of Atlantis, the list of interesting finds is still impressive. One of the most famous is the Inagui Monument, located near the Ryukyu Islands, not far from the Japanese Yonaguni. These are stone structures located at a shallow depth that have regular geometric shapes. Despite the fact that most scientists consider them to be a natural geological formation, many researchers and pseudo-archaeologists are trying to prove that these stones are the result of human activity. Another mystery is the megalith found at the bottom of the Gulf of Pantelleria Vecchia in the Tunisian Strait. This is a huge stone, 12 meters long and weighing 15 tons, in which there are 3 round holes. Based on its structure, it is assumed that it was processed by man in the Mesolithic, about 15,000 years ago. However, rock analysis showed that its age could be much higher, more than 40,000 years, which casts doubt on its origin. The Cuban underwater city is another mysterious discovery made in 2001 off the west coast of Cuba. With the help of sonar, geometric structures resembling pyramids and rings consisting of granite blocks were discovered. These findings raised a lot of questions among researchers, as they could be both natural formations and the result of human activity. These and other objects remain the subject of active research and discussion because their origin can reveal a lot of unknown things about ancient civilizations and the nature of the ocean depths. Gate of the Sun. One of the most mysterious artifacts of the ancient city of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, located near the sacred Lake Titicaca. This massive stone arch, carved from a single block of andesite, weighs about 10 tons and is believed to date back to the 1st millennium AD. Despite its ruined state, the Gate of the Sun continues to amaze researchers and attract supporters of theories about alien influence on ancient civilizations. The most striking thing is the carved patterns and images on the arch. In the center is a mysterious deity with rays around his head, which resembles a sun god or an entity that came from the sky. Some researchers claim that the patterns around him represent a complex calendar, and the symbols on the panels may be encrypted information about astronomical phenomena or star maps. The connection with UFOs is reinforced by the legends of local peoples who claim that their ancestors communicated with gods who descended from the sky. Some ufologists see images of spacecraft or technology in the symbolism of the Gate of the Sun. Moreover, the mysterious precision of the gate's creation, its resistance to time and erosion, and the impossibility of explaining its function point to the intervention of extraterrestrial intelligence. Persian windmills. These unique windmills are located in the city of Nashtafan in eastern Iran and are ancient structures that are almost 1,000 years old. They were built around the year 1000 and are among the earliest examples of wind power in the world. These mills differ from the European models we are used to in their design. They have a vertical axis, which is ideal for the local climate. The strong winds that blow in this region rotate wooden blades connected to a vertical shaft, which drives a mechanism for grinding grain. What is especially impressive is that these mills are still in working order today. They are made of natural materials such as wood, clay, and reeds, which not only highlight the skill of ancient Persian builders, but also ensure the durability of the structure over the centuries. These mills not only fulfilled their practical function, but also became a symbol of the sustainability and ingenuity of ancient engineers. Today, they are an important cultural heritage, reminding us of how ancient civilizations were able to harness natural forces with minimal impact on the environment. The Nashtafan mills are living testament to the technical genius of the ancient Persians, still working after a millennium. 5 skeletons that shouldn't exist. In the spring of 2024, archaeologists made a strange discovery in Poland. Human remains were found under the rubble of one of the buildings in the Wolf's Lair complex, the former residence of the Nazi elite. 5 skeletons, 3 adults, a teenager, and a baby, all without feet or hands, without identification marks, without clothes, without explanation. This part of the complex belonged to Hermann Göring. This is where he held closed meetings. There were no random people here, and even more so, there could not have been burials. The area was tightly guarded and only a few had access to these premises. Who these people were has still not been established. No dentures, papers, or military tags were found. Only skeletons, strangely arranged as if someone was deliberately creating a scene. Execution version? But who is the baby then? The version of a ritual? Archaeologists do not rule out that something irrational, almost religious, was happening in the last days of the Reich. Hitler himself was convinced of the sacred role of this war. He believed that the struggle of the Third Reich was not just politics, but the revival of the ancient order. Why were these bodies in the center of the lair? Why were they not taken away, buried, but simply thrown under the floor? And why, during the retreat, did the Nazis spend their energy not on saving, but on destroying bunkers, blowing up everything in sight, as if they were afraid, not of the advancing Soviet army, but of future archaeologists? Maybe it was not about these bodies at all, but about what was hidden nearby, something that should not have been left behind, something that they buried as a secret. A find in a hard-to-reach cave. This bronze dagger with a bone handle is a Bronze Age artifact found in Malta in a nearly inaccessible cave beneath the Dingley Cliff. It dates back to around 2000 BC and belongs to the Borg in Nadur phase when Malta had an advanced Bronze Age culture. However, it is still unknown why the ancient inhabitants chose this remote cave to deposit their artifacts. Perhaps the site had special significance or ritual value. The dagger's handle is decorated with circular patterns, which is both eye-catching and questionable. This motif is reminiscent of some elements of Mycenaean Greek art, which may indicate cultural influence or trade links. Interestingly, Mycenaean pottery shards were also found in the Bronze Age village where the dagger was discovered. Why was the dagger left in this cave? Was it part of a ritual or a symbol of special status? We can only guess, but every detail, from the green patina on the blade to the mysterious circles on the handle, makes us think about the life and worldview of the ancient Maltese and possible connections with the Mycenaean Greeks. Nuragic bronze figurines. These figurines with horned helmets shed light on mysterious people whose origins are still controversial. In the 12th century BC, the Mediterranean faced a catastrophe: the invasion of the so-called Sea Peoples, who united to attack the major civilizations of the Bronze Age. These warlike peoples, described by the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III, attacked such great powers as Ugarit, the Hittites, Cyprus, the Canaanites, and even the mighty Egypt. It is with their invasions that the Bronze Collapse is associated, the disappearance or weakening of many great states. One of the most mysterious tribes among the Sea Peoples are considered to be the shouldnts, or Shardana. In Egyptian images, they are depicted in horned helmets and armor. However, the most interesting thing is the connection of this people with the island of Sardinia. In the Phoenician inscriptions on the Nora stone, Sardinia is referred to as Srdn, the same name used by the Egyptians to refer to the shouldnts. This theory is supported by the Nuragic bronze statues found on the island. They depict warriors with the same horned helmets as in the reliefs of Ramses III and armed with shields and swords. This raises the question, were the shouldns originally from Sardinia, or did they settle on the island after their campaigns in the eastern Mediterranean? While historians continue to study the artifacts, this mystery remains unsolved and gives rise to many hypotheses about the role of the shouldns in the disappearance of Bronze Age civilizations. A man out of time. Michel Siffre became a pioneer in the study of time and the work of the human mind. His experiments amazed scientists so much that even NASA used his results. In 1962, 23-year-old Siffre spent 2 months in complete isolation in a cave, refusing watches and sunlight. He wanted to find out how the body perceives time without external reference points. It turned out that a person outside the usual 24-hour cycle switches to a 48-hour rhythm, and time is felt differently. 5 minutes seemed like 2. 10 years later, he repeated the experiment, spending 6 months in a Texas cave. His discoveries became the basis of chronobiology and helped in the preparation of astronauts for long missions. Magic and the occult. Honestly, for a long time I considered all this talk about magic in the Third Reich an exaggeration. Another myth to add theatricality to evil. But the deeper you delve into it, the less doubt remains. They really believed it. And not just believed, but built a state in which occultism was built into the system itself. Himmler considered himself a direct heir to the ancient magicians. He personally oversaw the creation of the Black Order, the inner elite of the SS, where runes, rituals, astrology, and even sacrifices were not a game, but part of the ideology. Ceremonies were held in the Wewelsburg Castle. The Nazis reconstructed the mythology of the ancient Germans, combining it with Tibetan and Indian symbols. They needed to create an alternative spirituality, one that justifies destruction, one that knows no pity. I was especially struck by how they worked with symbols. This is not just a swastika. These are runes, signs of the sun, blood as a magical substance, a ritual sword. They didn't just kill, they believed that they were killing in the name of. Some documents found after the war directly indicated an interest in telepathy, prophecies, and the search for sacred artifacts. They say that in the last months of the war in Berlin, they were looking not for a way to win, but for a way to disappear, to cross over, to escape to where, in their opinion, everything was just beginning. It sounds like madness, but that was exactly what was normal back then. Ancient wooden artifact. Archaeologists in Britain have discovered one of the oldest and best preserved wooden tools. This ancient wooden spade-shaped tool, found in the wetlands near Poole Harbor, dates back to the Middle Bronze Age and is approximately 3,500 years old. Due to its submersion in water, the wood has been preserved in an amazing state. Researchers have determined that the spade was carved from oak and would have required many hours of painstaking work, highlighting its importance to its prehistoric owner. Radiocarbon dating has shown that it is around 3,500 years old, making it a unique find for Britain. The tool may have been used for tilling the land, cutting peat, or even fishing, the main occupations of local residents. Scientists believe that during this period, people led a semi-seasonal lifestyle on the wetlands, using the area's resources during the warm season and leaving it in the winter when the areas were flooded. The discovery site was presumably used for drying peat or storing supplies. Alien visitors in Egypt. Recent archaeological excavations in Egypt have led to a sensational discovery that has attracted the attention of the entire world. Archaeologists have found artifacts in the Giza Plateau area that, according to some scientists, may be evidence that aliens visited Earth 5,000 years ago. It all started with excavations in a recently opened tomb dating back to the Old Kingdom of Egypt. Among the items found, metal plates with mysterious symbols and images of flying objects that resembled modern UFOs stood out. An analysis of the artifacts showed that they were covered in writing in an unknown language. Some scientists suggest that this could be a message from aliens, which the ancient Egyptians could have perceived as contact with another civilization. Linguists are already working to decipher these symbols, but the results remain unclear. Attention was also drawn to the images of unidentified flying objects on the plates, which, according to ufologists, could be a diagram of an alien ship. It seems to me that so far the researchers have made a lot of hasty conclusions, and most likely the interpretation of these plates will be more down to earth. Therefore, it is better to wait until the study of these artifacts is completed and find out what symbols are depicted and why they were there. Mysterious mask. A strange iridium artifact found in Florida challenges traditional ideas about ancient civilizations. According to researchers, this object is 12,000 years old and is made of iridium, a metal that is extremely rare on Earth and most often found in meteorites. The artifact is striking in its delicacy and skillful processing, which suggests that the ancient craftsmen had technologies that were significantly ahead of their time. An image is engraved on the surface of the object, reminiscent of the deity Viracocha, known in the Inca culture as the creator of all things. According to legend, Viracocha came from Lake Titicaca, bringing light and knowledge. This image may be evidence of a connection between ancient peoples and an extraterrestrial civilization, which would explain the use of rare meteorite material to create this artifact. Historians believe that this object was stolen by Spanish conquistadors in 1715 and taken away on the ship La Concepcion. The ship sank in a storm, leaving much of its cargo, including other artifacts, on the ocean floor. The mask washed up on the beach and is believed by experts to be just a small part of the $5 billion lost treasure. Forest swastika. Sometimes an idea can take root literally, in the ground, in the forest, among trees that have been growing for decades. In the 90s, strange pine plantings were first discovered in Germany, so that in the fall, when the leaves on the neighboring trees fell, the crowns remained green and drew a swastika. Such plantings were found in at least 4 places. The most famous is near Uckermark in the north of the country. The trees were planted in the 30s, 140 spruce trees. In shape, an ideal Nazi emblem, visible only from the air, from the ground, just a forest, from a helicopter, a symbol of power launched deep into time. It was not the idea itself that struck me, but the method. This is not graffiti, not a drawing on a wall. This is an engineering project, long-term. Plant a forest so that in 60 years someone from the sky will understand whose territory this is. After the unification of Germany, such areas began to be cut down. They were afraid that fans would go there, that it would become a place of power for those who believe that it is not over yet. And you know, there is some special irony in this. Everything that they wanted to erase grows. Even in the literal sense, the Nazis created symbols not for their contemporaries, but for descendants, so that their cult would continue to live even if nothing remained. No flag, no borders, only the forest. Milk tooth. Archaeologists from Novosibirsk made an important discovery at the Obashir site in the foothills of the Pamir Alay in Kyrgyzstan. They found about 5,000 ancient artifacts, including stone tools, jewelry, and a modern human tooth. Canadian anthropologist Bence Viola from the University of Toronto confirmed that this tooth belongs to Homo sapiens. Archaeologists compared the finds with earlier complexes in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan studied back in Soviet times. These complexes, located in the Tian Shan and Pamir Mountains, showed striking similarities in the types and methods of processing stone tools. Before this find, it was believed that humans did not live in Central Asia from 20 to 10,000 years ago due to difficult climatic conditions. The found Homo sapiens tooth, dating back to the Mesolithic, was the first find of its kind in the region. Oldest human tooth. Scientists have announced a sensational discovery in Germany. Ancient dental fossils estimated to be almost 10 million years old that they say do not fit into the established chronology of human history. What's truly shocking is that one of these fossils resembles the teeth of man's earliest ancestors. However, until now, such teeth have only been found in Africa, not Europe, and even then the existing range of fossils is millions of years younger. Found in September 2016 near the German city of Eppelsheim, two well-preserved teeth date back to approximately 9.7 million years ago. One of the teeth, an upper right first molar, is similar in characteristics to other specimens found in the area, but the other tooth, the upper left canine, is different, and the researchers say its outline and shape are similar to those of hominin species, including Australopithecus afarensis. The problem is that Lucy is estimated to be only 3 million years old, and it is believed that humanity's earliest ancestors began their migration from Africa to Europe and Asia approximately 100,000 years ago. So the question is, who did these teeth belong to? Which were in the wrong place and at the wrong time, and how did they get there? Space. The more I looked into the late Nazi projects, the more often I had the feeling that at some point they stopped acting within the framework of this reality, as if they themselves did not believe in victory on Earth, and began to look for a way out to another dimension, in the literal sense. Projects related to aviation increasingly resembled an attempt to break away from conventional physics. Disc-shaped devices, tests with an electromagnetic field, ideas for a gravitational shield. But behind the engineering came another layer, an ideological one. They believed that humanity had lost contact with something greater, and that the Reich must restore this contact. In 1945, strange terms appeared in SS documents: solar mind, pure perception, signal interception. At first I thought more pseudo-scientific constructs, but then I saw that this was not done by marginal people, but by people associated with the Ahnenerbe and personally with Himmler. They were looking for a way to establish a telepathic connection with someone or something they called a higher form of consciousness. According to one version, it wasn't even about gods, but about extraterrestrial intelligence, which had allegedly once contacted the Aryan race. Theories on this differ. Some believe that it was about a direct connection with an extraterrestrial civilization. Some believe that it was an attempt to gain access to the memory of the planet. But the fact is that in the last years of the war, the Reich spent resources on absolutely non-frontline tasks. Not the defense of Berlin, but experiments with consciousness, hypnosis, radio frequencies, anomalous zones. And then rumors appeared that some of them did leave. Not to Argentina, not to Antarctica, but higher. That it wasn't just ships that were being developed, but carriers for going beyond the Earth. I'm not convinced by such theories, but it's also impossible to dismiss them completely, because if you saw how many people after the war were looking not only for escaped officers, but also for bases, where they couldn't possibly be, you would also ask yourself, what if they really didn't plan to stay? Remains of Jesus' brother. A 2,000-year-old ossuary with the inscription, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus, has been discovered in Israel. This has sparked a heated debate. Perhaps the box contained the remains of James the Just, the first bishop of Jerusalem and brother of Jesus. Today, the artifact is on display in Atlanta among 350 ancient relics from the time of Christ. However, its authenticity remains in question. The owner of the ossuary, collector Oded Golan, was accused of forging the inscription, claiming that he added the phrase, brother of Jesus. But after a multi-year trial, the charges were dropped, although the judge clarified that this does not prove the authenticity of the artifact. If the inscription is real, the ossuary will be the oldest material evidence of the existence of Jesus. In the 1st century, Jews kept the bones of the deceased in limestone boxes, so the discovery of such an ossuary is not surprising. In 2017, another artifact related to him was found, the ancient text, the First Apocalypse of James. It says that Jesus passed on secret knowledge to his brother, including a prediction of his death. This text was banned because it did not correspond to the canonical New Testament. Are these finds really 300 million years old? From time to time, miners find strange artifacts in coal seams that appear to have been created by intelligent beings. This poses some awkward questions for science since the age of these rocks is estimated at 300 million years. How could objects that were clearly made by hand get there? After all, at that time, the Earth was inhabited only by giant insects and the first reptiles, and there was no talk of people, dinosaurs, or even advanced technologies. However, the finds continue to amaze us. In 1912, an iron pot was extracted from a coal seam in Oklahoma, and in 1851, a zinc and silver vase was discovered in Massachusetts, the rock of which is 534 million years old. A metal rod similar to a rack made of aluminum with an admixture of magnesium was found in Russia. Its origin is even more mysterious. Aluminum was discovered only in 1825, and the age of the coal in which it was found exceeds 300 million years. Scientists have found that the metal is saturated with carbon, which confirms its incredible age. But if so, who made it? Some believe that these finds are traces of a vanished civilization that existed long before us, but was wiped off the face of the planet by a global cataclysm. Others suggest that the objects could have been left by aliens or even time travelers. Skeptics, in turn, are sure that this is a hoax or dating error. There is also a theory that coal was formed not millions but only a few thousand years ago under the influence of deep gases and pressure. If so, then the artifacts may not be so ancient at all.
Reich Gold. One of the sunken ships on the Austrian Lake Toplitzy has been hiding its secret for decades. The depth, murky water, dangerous currents, the perfect hiding place. Rumors have been circulating for a long time. Boxes of gold, documents, stolen works of art at the bottom. But recently there was a reason to return to these rumors in earnest. Researchers have discovered a sealed safe. According to various estimates, up to 4 tons of gold. At first I thought it was another legend, but then photographs, footage, documents appeared, including from the CIA archives. According to them, the ship really was carrying a special cargo that was not to fall into the hands of the Allies at any cost. This is not just wealth, this is a backup plan. A resource for escape, for restoration, for continuation in the shadows. We talk about the legacy of the Reich in technology, in ideas, in people. But every legacy also has a material part, heavy, valuable, dangerous. And the fact that it was hidden in lakes, in mines, in glaciers speaks of the scale. These were not random hidden chests. It was a system. Mysterious disappearance at the lighthouse. A lighthouse is a place that invariably evokes a feeling of loneliness and anxiety. The story of the disappearance of 3 lighthouse keepers from the Flannan Islands has become a real mystical mystery, attracting the attention of lovers of unexplained events. It all began in 1900, when a helicopter crew was sent to Eilean Moor, part of the Flannan Islands, to check on the work of the lighthouse and its keepers. Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur. When they arrived, they found that no one was there, as if the men had simply disappeared. An overturned chair was found inside the lighthouse. Untouched food was on the table, and the clock did not work. The ship's log reported that there was a strong storm in the area, but there were no reports of it in the surrounding areas. Based on this, it was assumed that the keepers died, carried away by the sea during their work, but the lack of traces of blood and other evidence gave rise to many mystical theories. Some believe that Eilean Moor Island has a sinister aura that affects people, causing them to lose their minds. Mysterious disappearances, lack of logical explanations, and strange details have made this story the basis for legends that speak of supernatural forces and even aliens. The lack of exact facts only fuels mystical theories, leaving more questions than answers.
Rare giant book. Here is one of 12 giant books from the 18th century written in Spanish. Its size is impressive, almost a meter in length. These books were created for religious ceremonies and contain detailed scripts for the services. Leather binding, wooden covers, pages made of tanned animal skin. All this made the book not only durable but also a symbol of the greatness of the church. Such manuscripts were intended for use in churches where priests and choirs could read the text from afar. That is why the letters are so large. Today, this rarity is kept in the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Scientists and restorers carefully study it, trying to preserve it in its original form. These books are a real window into the past, allowing you to see what liturgical texts looked like and what the attitude to writing was in the era of colonial Latin America.
Hollow Earth, the last door. If someone had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have simply chuckled. Vikings, Antarctica, the underworld, Nazis who had gone inside the planet, it all sounded like crazy science fiction. But the deeper I delve into documents, diaries, declassified reports, the more I understand. This is not just nonsense. It was part of an ideological construct. According to one theory, the Nazis believed in the existence of a hollow Earth, a space inside the planet where an ancient civilization had survived. Paradise, Agartha, the inner world. The interpretations differ, but the essence is the same. It is supposedly a place of power that has eluded destruction and time. The archives do indeed contain mentions of expeditions to Antarctica, planes that disappeared without a trace, pilots' stories about a mysterious glow that emanated not from the sky but from under their feet. Some of these ideas may have originated in the Ahnenerbe, some came later among those fleeing. It doesn't matter who the author was, what matters is how these myths fit into the worldview, not as a fairy tale, as a refuge. Unusual artifact. The photo shows a carved model of an eye made from ivory and horn between 1800 and 1900. This object may seem mysterious at first glance, but its purpose is related to medicine and education. In the 19th century, anatomical models made from natural materials were popular among doctors and teachers, who used them to study and explain the complex structures of the human body. Such models allowed students and doctors to examine the structure of the eye and its functions in detail without resorting to real organs. Ivory and horn were used because of their durability and smooth surface, which helped craftsmen create accurate and realistic details. In addition, such objects were considered a status symbol and were used to demonstrate knowledge and experience in anatomy. In the 19th century, medicine was actively developing, and such models played an important role in education.
Bronze military diploma. In the ancient city of Pare, located in the southeastern Turkish province of Adıyaman, archaeologists have made a unique discovery: a bronze military diploma dating back about 2,000 years. Pare, one of the 5 largest cities of the Kingdom of Commagene, retained its importance during the Roman period. Excavations in this ancient city began in 2001 and continue intermittently. During the work, a Roman fountain, large stone blocks, aqueducts, and architectural structures were discovered. Recently, during the final stage of excavations, a bronze plate with an inscription in Latin was found, which turned out to be a military diploma dated to 123 AD, the reign of Emperor Hadrian. The translation of the text by Professor Mustafa Hamdi Sayar confirmed that the diploma belonged to a soldier named Calcilius Anticus, who served in Syria for 20 years. For his service, he received Roman citizenship and the right to marry. Such diplomas were issued in large numbers, about 100,000 copies. However, most of them were melted down, and only about 800 have survived to this day. Of these, more than 650 have already been studied. The found diploma became an important addition to this rare collection.
Jade cicada. Here is a jade cicada created during the Western Zhou dynasty. This artifact is not just a decoration, it had a deep symbolic meaning. In Chinese culture, the cicada was considered a symbol of rebirth and immortality, and jade was a stone of eternity. Such a figurine could be placed in the mouth of the deceased before burial, believing that it would help the soul pass into the afterlife and be reborn. Traces of red paint found on the artifact are also important. Red symbolized protection and good luck. The finest carving demonstrates the high level of skill of ancient Chinese artisans. Note the eyes, folded paws, and patterns that give the figurine an almost mystical look. Such objects were part of rituals and reflected the religious beliefs of people of that era.
The longest mound in Europe. Archaeologists in eastern Bohemia have found the longest Neolithic mound in Europe, about 5,300 years old. The discovery was made in June during roadwork in the Hradec Kralove area. The mound near the village of Dogalice, about 190 meters long and up to 15 meters wide, belongs to the funnel beaker culture. Although the above-ground structure has been lost due to agricultural activity, archaeologists have excavated its entrance, identified by a preserved pit and ditch. Inside the mound, 2 central burials were found, probably belonging to important persons, and 28 additional graves. These burials will undergo further laboratory analysis for accurate dating. The first central burial included a pit with drains and post holes, as well as a ceramic offering vessel.
The second burial had no internal structure, but the body was laid on its left side. Archaeologists also found funerary objects such as pottery fragments, flint arrowheads, and a blade. These finds provide valuable information about the burial practices and cultural traditions of the time.
Aluminum wedge. The Ayuda aluminum wedge, also known as the Ayuda object, is one of the most mysterious and controversial finds of our time. According to various sources, it was discovered in 1973 in Romania on the banks of the Mureș River under a layer of sand about 10 meters deep next to the bones of a mastodon. The main reason for the conspiracy theories surrounding the Ayuda aluminum wedge is that it is made from aluminum, a material unknown to mankind before the 1800s. While the wedge is believed to be around 10,000 years old, the composition of the wedge includes 89% aluminum, 6.2% copper, 1.8% zinc, and other elements. Aluminum production requires temperatures of 1,000 degrees, and mass production began only in 1885. The wedge is covered with a thick layer of oxide, the age of which is estimated at 300–400 years. After the discovery, the object was transferred to the Archaeological Institute of Cluj-Napoca for research, but the dating method was not specified. The basis for the theory of the extraterrestrial origin of the wedge is its aluminum composition. Romanian ufologist Florin Georgita and other researchers consider the wedge to be evidence of extraterrestrial activity in the past. However, there are also scientists who consider the find to be a fake, the purpose of creation and origin of which remain unclear. Since 1995, the Ayuda wedge is no longer on public display and is kept in an undisclosed location, although there are photographs confirming its existence. Einstein. Sometimes history speaks much more quietly than we are used to. No conspiracies, no symbols, no runes, just a letter, a couple of paragraphs written 10 years before it all began. In 1922, Albert Einstein writes a letter to his sister. He says that the atmosphere in Germany is becoming increasingly heavy, that there is panic in the air, and that he, despite scientific recognition, feels that he no longer belongs here. He will leave. He will be saved, but thousands of others will not. Einstein's letter is not a prophecy. It is simply the honest view of a man who has understood that darkness does not appear suddenly. It rises slowly, from ordinary words, from ideas, from symbols that at first seem abstract and then become weapons. When I read this letter, I was moved, because against the background of everything we discussed, artifacts, rituals, myths, it sounds especially sober. Einstein did not talk about secret programs. He simply knew what fear looked like.
Tuten Kamoon sandals. This exquisite pair of sandals were found in the famous tomb of Pharaoh Tuten Kamoon and are now part of an Egyptian collection. These sandals are not just shoes, but a true work of art and a symbolic detail reflecting the worldview of the ancient Egyptians. They are made of wood and covered with intricate inlays made of bark, green leather, and gold foil. The images on the sandals show Egypt's enemies, the Nubians and Asians, bound together, symbolizing the pharaoh's triumph over his enemies. The sandals may have been used as part of a ceremonial wardrobe and had a special meaning. Imagine the pharaoh wearing such shoes as if trampling on his enemies, demonstrating his power and protection of Egypt. The inlay and detailing of the work is amazingly skillful, testifying to the high level of craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptian masters. For the pharaoh, such objects emphasized his status, his divine right to the throne, and his role as a protector of the nation. Life in a meteorite. Researchers studying a meteorite found on the island of Sri Lanka have said that it is not just a rock fragment from outer space, but a potential artifact of extraterrestrial origin. The analysis revealed the presence of fossils of microscopic algae, which, according to scientists, may be evidence of the panspermia hypothesis, the idea that life is spread throughout the universe via asteroids and comets. These discoveries have attracted widespread interest as they could support the theory of the existence of life beyond Earth. However, the results have been criticized by the scientific community. Some experts argue that the fossils found are too similar to terrestrial microorganisms living in fresh water. The possibility of contamination of the meteorite by terrestrial life forms during its stay on the surface of the Earth also remains a serious argument against the hypothesis of extraterrestrial origin of the find.
Knights versus snails. Medieval manuscripts are not only sources of knowledge but also a real treasure trove of mysterious and funny illustrations. Among them, marginalia deserves special attention. Strange drawings on the margins of manuscripts. And one of the most curious plots that can be found in English and French books of the 13th, the 14th, the centuries is a battle between a knight and a snail. Why did the monks who copied the books need to depict such an absurd scene? One explanation is simple boredom. The monks amused themselves by decorating the pages with grotesque drawings, and gradually this became a kind of art. But such illustrations could also have hidden meanings. Perhaps the snail symbolized cowardice. Like a knight in armor, it hides in its shell. Some historians believe that this is a satire on the slowness of the aristocracy, or even a mockery of certain political groups. Be that as it may, these strange scenes still cause debate among researchers, and the battle between the knight and the snail remains one of the most mysterious medieval miniatures. Egypt and the Swastika. The more I studied the archives about the Ahnenerbe, the clearer it became. It was important for the Nazis not just to find ancient artifacts. They needed to inscribe themselves in the great past, to create a line where the Aryans are not just a people, but direct heirs of the most ancient civilizations. Egypt occupied a special place in this system, not because of the pyramids and mummies, but because of the symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the solar cross. For them, it was not just a sign, it was a code. The swastika is indeed found in the cultures of India, Tibet, China, and in Egypt, at least in the form of indirect symbolism. The movement of the sun, the four directions, the cult of Ra, they found confirmation of their ideas in this. Sometimes far-fetched, sometimes very convincing. Before the war, some researchers associated with the Ahnenerbe actually visited Egypt, unofficially. They were interested in ancient books, funeral rituals, ideas about the afterlife, the way the Egyptians linked power, magic, and order. The Nazis perceived it as a system, not a religion, but a control mechanism, as if the ancients knew something that had been forgotten, and they came to restore it. I looked at photographs from those expeditions, people in SS uniforms standing by temples, stone bas-reliefs decorated with runes. It was not just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own religion, new, but based on symbols that inspire power. When Hitler spoke of returning to the past, he did not mean Prussia. He looked further, into millennia, into civilizations that disappeared but left a trace, and he wanted this trace to lead to them. Rock Crystal Reliquary. This reliquary, created in France between 1175 and 1200, is a work of art and religious craftsmanship. It is made of gold and silver and decorated with rock crystal, which adds transparency and lightness. The relics of saints or other valuable relics of great importance to believers could be kept inside. Such reliquaries often became objects of worship. They were exhibited in churches and monasteries where they attracted pilgrims from all over. The design of the reliquary itself is especially interesting. It is made in the form of a miniature building with decorative arches, columns, and small figures of saints, which symbolize the idea of a spiritual temple. The transparent cylinder of rock crystal allowed believers to see the contents, which strengthened their faith in the sanctity of the stored relics. Alien ship fragments in the ocean. A renowned Harvard University astrophysicist, Avi Loeb, who gained popularity for his UFO research and possible contacts with aliens, reported the possible discovery of alien ship fragments on the ocean floor. Loeb became famous for his theory about the unusual nature of the asteroid Oumuamua, which accelerated and deviated from the expected trajectory for no apparent reason in 2017, which led the scientists to suggest its artificial origin. Recently, Loeb drew attention to a meteorite that fell into the Pacific Ocean in 2014. The object, known as IM-1, was distinguished by an unusual speed of movement. The scientist went to the site of its fall and, together with his team, extracted fragments from a depth of 1,700 meters. As a result, they discovered about 50 small balls consisting of iron, magnesium, and titanium, about 0.3 millimeters in size. Loeb and his colleagues suggest that these spherules may be evidence of an alien spacecraft crash landing on Earth. However, many scientists are skeptical of his hypothesis, arguing that such fragments with such a composition may be the result of natural processes that occur when meteorites fall into the atmosphere and onto the ocean floor. Birth certificate.
Here is one of the oldest birth certificates created over 4,000 years ago in the Sumerian civilization. It consists of 2 clay tablets, one covered in cuneiform writing and the other with a footprint of a child. In ancient Mesopotamia, such tablets were used as official documents confirming the birth of a person. The cuneiform text probably contains the child's name, the names of the parents, the date of birth, and perhaps even astrological predictions. And the footprint served as a kind of personal signature, a unique way to identify the baby. This artifact shows how developed the bureaucratic systems were in Sumer. Even then, people understood the importance of documentation, and such records could be used to confirm inheritance or social rights. This is a real window into the ancient world, which seems so distant, but in some ways is very similar to ours.
Ancient city in an oasis. Archaeologists have discovered the ruins of an ancient city over 4,000 years old in the Khaybar Oasis in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The city, called Al-Nata, was founded around 2400 BC and consisted of about 50 houses, designed to accommodate about 500 people. The city was surrounded by a powerful wall 14.5 kilometers long, which probably protected its inhabitants from raids and harsh climate. Interestingly, Al-Nata was preserved thanks to a basalt layer that protected the ruins from destruction. The discovery was made possible by observations from above. The structure of the city walls and buildings hidden underground was visible from the air. Al-Nata became an important evidence of the transition of the region's inhabitants from a nomadic lifestyle to a settled one. Previously, scientists believed that at that time this territory was only a desert, unsuitable for life. However, finds in the necropolis, including metal axes, daggers, and agate items, indicate a high level of development of crafts and technologies. Experiments. I will not dwell on the details on purpose. They are in the public domain and they are worse than any horror movie. But to understand who we are dealing with, we need to at least take a quick look there, behind the doors of the camp laboratories. Dr. Sigmund Rascher, one of those who officially worked for the SS and conducted experiments on people. In a pressure chamber, literally, prisoners were placed in a sealed capsule to simulate conditions at an altitude of 20,000 meters, without oxygen, without protection. They watched how long a person would survive, how the heart beats when it stops. Those who did not die in the pressure chamber were frozen. They were immersed in ice water, their body temperature was monitored, their brain reaction was tracked, and then they tried to revive them. Sometimes they succeeded, sometimes they didn't. Everything was documented, and this was not cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It was a calculation. They were interested in the limit. Where does the body end? Where does the spirit begin? How to use pain as a tool. There is a version that the Nazis were looking for a way to rewrite the boundaries of the human body, to create a fighter who can withstand extreme conditions, or vice versa, to make something else out of a person. Controllable, reprogrammed. And then there was the Die Glock project, the Bell, a device shrouded in secrets, rumors, and guesses. It was created in the depths of Silesia. Allegedly, there was a heavy liquid inside with the codename Serum 525. The purpose has not yet been established. Someone says anti-gravity. Someone experiments with time. But the main thing is that they worked on it seriously, underground, in secret, until the very end. And the more I read about all this, the more the same question arises. Did they really believe that they could go beyond the human, or were they just desperately trying to escape from what was inside it?
Mystical figurines. These unusual figurines from the ancient Mexican city of Teotihuacan are rare examples of Aztec art and worldview. Found in 1933 in the Metepec area by an American anthropologist, the figurines depict men and women with opening hollow torsos. Inside are smaller figurines or objects, which causes much debate about their meaning and purpose. Often such figurines are called masters due to their peculiar content. The cavity in the chest area is symbolically closed by a door, which hints at hidden knowledge, a secret meaning, or the concept of the inner self. Perhaps these figurines embody the philosophical concept of Nahual, an inner spirit or companion that accompanied a person in his spiritual quest and on his life's journey. Other interpretations suggest a connection between the figurines and symbols of fertility, education, or spiritual growth. They may have represented social or religious roles, warrior, ruler, merchant, or woman from the elite strata of Teotihuacan society. The fine detailing and the ability to open and close the figurines speaks to the high level of craftsmanship of their creators. This unique design may have symbolized the interaction between the inner and outer worlds, as well as the desire to reveal hidden truths about the nature of man and the world.
Skin and scales on an ancient skeleton. Paleontologists have studied the remarkably well-preserved skeleton of a plesiosaur found in Germany back in 1940. The fossil lay in a museum garden for decades until scientists discovered in 2020 that it had preserved soft tissue, skin, and even cell nuclei. This discovery helps to better understand the appearance of ancient marine reptiles that lived 183 million years ago. The body of the plesiosaur was sealed in the Posidonia shale, due to which the skin survived along the spine and on the flipper. It turned out to be thicker than previously thought and resembled the skin of sea turtles. Microscopic analysis showed that the tissue structure corresponds to modern reptiles. The most amazing find was the scales on the flipper. They are similar to the scales of snakes and lizards and could have helped the plesiosaur either when moving along the bottom or when maneuvering in the water. Scientists compare the appearance of this reptile to a hybrid of a leatherback and a green turtle. The appearance of long-necked plesiosaurs is still debated, but this discovery provides the first real data on what they looked like.
City in the heart of the Sahara. Central Sahara in Niger is a territory practically inaccessible to people. Any tourist traveling south from the Mediterranean coast faces a huge number of obstacles. Giant dunes, sweltering heat, and drying winds create a landscape almost devoid of life. But those who penetrate the depths of the Great Desert are in for a surprise. Surrounded by sandy canyons on a lonely plateau are the ruins of the huge fortified city of Jade. These ruins, which range in age from 800 to 1,000 years, are a mystery. The city appeared when this part of the desert was much more humid and fertile. Little is known about the inhabitants of these places, and who built this city remains unknown. The fortified city of Jade is a ksar, a typical North African fortified settlement. Such settlements typically consist of residential structures built around a central food warehouse, with an emphasis on defensive functions. Ksars like Jade were built from palm trunks covered with an adobe mixture, hardened by the desert winds to the hardness of metal. What sets Jade apart from most similar ksars is its incredible size. The colossal fortress rises above the desert, making the rest of the landscape insignificant. The Kanuri people who inhabit the desert in the center of the Sahara were the last known inhabitants of this place. Perhaps they inherited the city from an older culture about which no data has been preserved. The turning point that forced the Kanuri to leave Jade was probably the drying up of drinking water. As the green landscape turned into desert, the water became brackish and the environment too harsh for survival. People lived on the Jade Plateau for about 60,000 years, leaving rock paintings and other evidence of their presence. Small cattle were bred here as early as 7000 BC, and cattle appeared around 3500 BC. Rock art discovered in the Air Mountains is approximately 5,500 to 4,500 years old. They depict a world with dense vegetation and an abundance of animals, completely unlike the modern landscape. Today, getting to the once great city can be difficult. This part of the world is unstable, and the tribes inhabiting the area are constantly fighting for limited resources. The Kanuri now live in the nearby desert village of Chirfa, but return to their ancestral site every year to harvest the dates. Strangely, the date palms continue to bear fruit. Kanuri is a remnant of the ancient Kanem civilization, which reigned in the Central Sahara from 700 to 1300 AD. The origins of this empire are shrouded in mystery, and it is unknown whether Jade was founded during this period or even earlier. If the Kanem built Jade, then excavations can reveal a lot about this culture. But if they inherited it, perhaps someday they will be able to discover something else, hidden from human eyes and protected by the desert, to reveal all its secrets. Samurai treasure. Not far from Tokyo, the largest treasure trove of antique coins in Japanese history was discovered. The treasure is kept in a huge clay pot, which is now on display in Kumagaya at the Saitama Prefectural Cultural Treasury, that is, the National Museum. The historical treasure of bronze coins not only reveals new historical data, but also serves as evidence of the natural chemical processes of time. The copper in their bronze alloy has oxidized over the past 400 years, causing the coins to take on a bright green hue due to a patina similar to that covering the Statue of Liberty. The clay pot of coins, which is more than half a meter wide, was likely buried hundreds of years ago. It was discovered by archaeologists last year in ruins that were the site of a medieval samurai pavilion. The coins date back to the 15th century during the Ming Dynasty in China. Coins from the Tang Dynasty, 7th century, were also found at the same excavation site. They are associated with Chinese dynasties because Japan was one of the last great civilizations to adopt its own coin system. The coins were held together on ropes passing through holes, and each rope contained 1,000 coins. The standard of the time was one string of 1,000 bronze coins equal to 1 ounce of silver. This knowledge of the historical period allowed archaeologists to estimate the number of coins without removing them from the giant pot. The number 260 inches was engraved on its lid. This coin hoard represented a huge fortune in 15th and 16th century Japan. For this money, one could buy enough rice to feed 500 people for a year.
Argentina. When I first read about Odessa, I thought it was just a plot for a movie, an organization created specifically to take Nazis out of Europe. But then I saw the documents, the maps, the interviews, the photos that don't explain themselves but say more than the official reports. After the war, dozens, hundreds of SS men disappeared. Not just hid, they disappeared. And almost all the traces led to one place, South America, especially Argentina, a country where dictators openly sympathized with Hitler and those who didn't want to be found hid in the mountains. In 2017, a cache was found in the Argentine Andes. Weapons from the Third Reich, medals, maps with German signatures. Everything was carefully hidden, the way you hide not museum exhibits but things that might be needed. Later, the CIA archives surfaced. Conversations were recorded that mentioned German bases, hidden settlements, and even Hitler. I am not a fan of conspiracy theories, but when too many random finds form a chain, it is no longer a coincidence. It is a route. Someone really was leaving. Someone continued the work. Not at the front, but in the shadows. What is especially frightening is not that they could survive, but that they could live a long time and pass on not orders, but ideas.
Buddha in Nirvana. Underground at the site of the ruins of a 7th century Buddhist monastery and temple in Ajna Tepe, archaeologists have discovered fragments of frescoes, stupas, and reliefs depicting Buddha, bodhisattvas, and other deities. Unfortunately, many of them were disfigured and partially destroyed in ancient times. One of the most famous finds was a 13-meter statue of Buddha in Nirvana. It was made of paksa blocks, compressed clay used in ancient times to create large sculptures. The statue was found in a ruined state, so it was literally assembled piece by piece. After excavations, the statue was divided into 72 parts and transported to the Museum of Antiquities of Tajikistan for restoration. Today, the original Buddha in Nirvana can be seen there, and its copy is exhibited in the National Museum of Tajikistan. These discoveries not only open important pages in the history of Buddhism in Central Asia, but also highlight the importance of Ajna Tepe as the center of spiritual culture of the ancient region. Knossos board game. The rules of this game have been lost to time, and to this day, no one knows how it was played. This artifact was discovered during excavations of the Palace of Knossos by British archaeologist Arthur Evans. Knossos, located on the island of Crete, is considered one of the oldest cities in Europe, and the game found dates back to around 1600 BC. Made of precious materials such as ivory, crystal, glass, gold, and silver, the game was not only an expensive pastime, but also perhaps a symbol of the high status of its owner. Archaeologists suggest that the game could have been used not only for entertainment, but also for rituals or divination. Some researchers even hypothesize that the complex patterns on the board may contain astronomical or mystical elements, which is of interest to supporters of the theory of the alien origin of ancient knowledge. Perhaps this mysterious board game once helped people communicate with higher powers or even with extraterrestrial civilizations.
Metal rod. How can this mysterious artifact be explained? Inside a stone found in the Meizong Mountains of China, collector Jilin Wang discovered a metal rod with a thread resembling a screw. But the strangest thing is that the hard rock formed around it, which suggests that the find could be millions of years old. Some have suggested that this is a meteorite with an alien artifact inside. Others believe that it is an ancient man-made object that, for unknown reasons, ended up in the ground and turned into a fossil. Skeptics believe that this is simply a rare natural formation and the screw is just a fossilized marine organism. But the most interesting thing is that similar finds have already been found in different parts of the world. Coincidence or evidence of an ancient unknown technology? For now, this artifact remains one of the most mysterious archaeological riddles. Technologies. When recalling the technological developments of the Third Reich, the most common references are to the V-1 and V-2 rockets. Indeed, these were the first ballistic missiles in history that hit cities and, perhaps, set the direction for the entire future space program. But this is only what became public, what the world saw. At the same time, work was underway in closed complexes on projects that still cause controversy. One of the most discussed is the Haunebu project. These were the developments of disc-shaped aircraft. In shape, they were like flying saucers. According to descriptions, they were machines with a gravity engine capable of vertical takeoff and reaching speeds that were inaccessible to aviation at that time. Diagrams, signatures, internal drawings, all of this exists. Perhaps these were just concepts. Perhaps something more. One of the key figures in this topic is Victor Schauberger, an Austrian engineer who studied vortex flows. His idea was that energy could be obtained not by burning fuel, but by controlling natural flows of water and air. The vortex as a source of power. He believed that nature had already invented the ideal form of movement, and man only needed to learn to copy it. The Nazis knew this, and apparently, they used it. The peculiarity of all these projects is that they did not look like weapons for the front. They were not created to turn the tide of the war. They were made as if for another purpose, not for victory, but for transition. This feeling is difficult to explain, but it is there, as if someone expected that these machines would be needed not in 1945, but later. Of course, most of these developments did not reach the testing stage, but their presence speaks of the scale of ambitions, of the desire to break out of limits, not figuratively, literally. In these drawings, diagrams, ideas, one could read the desire to find a way out when all other roads were already blocked. Trilingual cuneiform. Here is the inscription of Xerxes I, one of the great Persian kings who reigned in the 5th century BC. The inscription is carved into a smooth section of rock 20 meters above the ground, making it difficult to access and giving it a special grandeur. It is located near Lake Van in modern-day Turkey and is part of the ancient fortress of Van. The inscription is unique in that it is written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, which was typical for Persian kings who sought to demonstrate their power over many nations. Xerxes I, famous for his campaigns against the Greeks and mentioned in Greek history, used such inscriptions to assert his power and grandeur. Each symbol here was carved with great precision, and cuneiform was used to convey an official message. The height and complexity of the inscription also indicates the power of the Persian king and was made to be visible to everyone who passed by. One of the most mysterious peoples of Europe. This altar is one of 4 known Nuragic altars, but the only one found during excavations. The artifact was discovered at the bottom of a well in the Donis Tebe monastery. On the altar there is an inscription: Valeria Vitella fulfills her vow to Lare freely and deservedly. Mount Ariaundi, inhabited since Roman times, is located in the valley of the Gulina River near Pamplona. Its strategic position has made the site important throughout history, as evidenced by the remains of Roman infrastructure and the later monastery dedicated to Saint Stephen. Little is known about Relic. Only 3 other altars testify to the worship of this deity. The new find expands the known geographical distribution of the Reich Gold. Sunken ship with lead ingots. About 2,000 years ago, a Roman ship sank in the Mediterranean Sea with valuable cargo, including massive lead ingots. The heaviest of them weighs 68 kilograms, which is about 205 Roman pounds, according to the University of Alicante. Markings on the ingot indicate that it belonged to a Roman emperor, possibly Nero. In addition, there were about 3,000 cans of fish sauce on board the ship. This sauce, known as garum, was popular in Roman cuisine and was widely used as a seasoning. The ship was about 32 meters long and was probably en route from Cadiz to Rome when it sank. The ship not only carried valuable metals but also foodstuffs important to the Roman diet. Exploring the shipwreck provides a unique opportunity to study the shipbuilding technologies and trading methods of the ancient Romans. Prototypes taken to the USA and USSR.
Night. In the silence of the archive storage, I leaf through old documents. On the cover of the folder is written, Operation Paperclip. Inside are lists of German names with notes in English. Werner von Braun, Hubertus Strughold, Arthur Rudolph, Nazi engineers and doctors who did not stand trial after the war. Instead of prison, new offices and laboratories awaited them on the other side of the ocean. Summer 1945, the war has just ended. The American military secretly takes hundreds of Third Reich specialists out of defeated Germany. Thus begins Operation Paperclip, a program that sent about 1,600 German scientists and engineers to the United States. The Americans diligently erase mentions of their Nazi past. Here is von Braun, a former SS officer who became a key engineer at NASA. Dr. Strughold, a participant in monstrous experiments on prisoners, is now called the father of space medicine in the United States. Engineer Rudolph, the creator of the V-2 rockets, who used slave labor from concentration camp prisoners, now designs Saturn rockets for America. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. Along with them, German aircraft designers, chemists, and dozens of other former Nazis settled in the United States. The Americans took away not only people, but also captured developments. Tons of secret drawings, rocket parts, experimental samples of new technology. Any knowledge that gave an advantage in the new war turned out to be more important than morality. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union is conducting a similar hunt. In the fall of 1946, Operation Osoavi Akim is carried out. In one night, more than 2,000 German engineers with their families are forcibly sent deep into the USSR. There, in closed facilities, former enemies work side by side with Soviet engineers. No one cares about past convictions, only the skills acquired in the service of Hitler. A few years later, rockets created with the participation of these German specialists will launch the Soviet satellite into orbit and send the first man into space. Many of the greatest breakthroughs of the Cold War, from ballistic missiles and jet aircraft to man's flight to the moon, grew out of this dark legacy of the Third Reich. The defeated Nazi genius was invisibly present in the achievements of the new superpowers. Nazi engineering did not disappear, it simply changed its banner. And along with it, part of the immoral ideology leaked out. The end justifies the means. Science serves power, even if there are crimes behind it. In words, the world condemned Nazism at Nuremberg. But in fact, the victors willingly used the fruits of its labor. This is the other side of victory, which they preferred to remain silent about. Sometimes I wonder, did we really win? Or did we just take what they created and integrate it into our world? If the technology, methods, and even people of the Third Reich became part of our future, does that mean we really rewrote it, or just continued it under a different flag? Stone tools in Dagestan. Archaeological finds have been made in Dagestan that significantly expand our understanding of the ancient history of mankind. The main objects of the study were the ancient sites of Mukkai I and Mukkai II, located along ancient riverbeds. Stone tools dating back millions of years were found here. The finds at the Mukkai I site attracted particular attention. Among them were flat picks, double-sided choppers, and other tools similar to those found at the Einsteins I site. These finds date back to the period 1.95–1.78 million years ago, which makes them some of the most ancient in Russia. The tools found at Mukkai I indicate a high level of technology among ancient people. They used stone chips to create chopping and cutting tools. However, unlike similar finds in East Africa, no hand axes were found here, which may indicate unique technologies typical of this part of the world. Of interest are also giant tools weighing 5–6 kilograms, which according to scientists were used to split bones and skulls to extract bone marrow. Such tools are found at sites where ancient people cut up trophies. Ritual table in Tava Tepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tava Tepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round-shaped adobe building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, nomadic peoples probably used Tawa Tepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen there is a thick layer of ash, and clay tokens with fingerprints which could serve as food coupons. The entrance originally had wooden columns, and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Animal bones and discarded pottery were found outside. The human figurines placed in the sacrificial pits and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the utensils indicate its ceremonial nature. Ancient tomb. Hidden in the shadow of the blue doors of an ancient Ming Dynasty tomb in China was a mystery for centuries. Having opened the gates, archaeologists encountered an extraordinary luxurious tomb from 400 years ago. The tomb, found during preparations for the construction of a highway in Shaanxi province, is impressive in its preservation and sophistication of execution. Researchers have confirmed that the tomb, dating back to the Ming era, contained nobles. Two luxurious wooden coffins with exquisite patterns and porcelain vessels indicate the high status of the deceased. Epitaphs hint at noble origins, and magnificently decorated coffers indicate a connection with the royal court. The finds include furniture, writing instruments, and artistic objects, highlighting the sophisticated lifestyle of the elite of the time. Despite many hypotheses, the exact reasons for the opulence and purpose of the tomb remain unknown, adding mystery to the history of the Ming Dynasty, a period of flourishing culture, art, and science in China. A holiday that no longer exists. I always thought that the Nazis were only rewriting history. Then I realized that they were rewriting everything, even Christmas. In the early 1930s, a systematic campaign began in Germany to cleanse holidays of their Christian and Jewish roots. Christmas, one of the most important family holidays in Europe, became a problem for the Third Reich. Christ, Mary, angels, the Star of Bethlehem, none of this fit into the ideology of Aryan superiority. They had to keep the form, but change the content. The baby Jesus disappears from the cards. Instead, there is a symbol of the sun. The Christmas tree becomes a tree of light, decorated not with balls and stars, but with SS runes, iron crosses, and solar signs. Santa Claus turns into the ancient German Odin, a bearded horseman who brings not joy, but order. Even the carols are rewritten. The music remains. The words are different. Instead of Silent Night, the anthem of the Third Reich, the Nazis did not just change the details. They reshaped the collective memory so that children would grow up in a world where even a holiday is not about love, but about strength, about purity, about the nation. This is no longer just an ideology. It is a capture of consciousness at the level of a fairy tale, where a person does not yet know anything, but already feels. I looked at old German postcards, at congratulations with runes, at Christmas trees with the SS emblem, and all this is not a parody, not fiction. It was a real holiday, only without faith, without forgiveness, without meaning. A holiday that no longer exists, and perhaps should never exist. Myths. If the Nazis were truly inventive in anything, it was in the way they rewrote myths. Almost any ancient culture that could be found to have an echo of power, ritual, sacrifice was turned into another Aryan source. And it doesn't matter how historically justified it was. The main thing was that it sounded impressive. With the Vikings, everything was simple. They were taken as an example of the pure masculine principle. Runes, swords, images of dark heroism. It was from this logic that Himmler tried to create from the SS not an army, but a cult, with its own symbols, rituals, even places of power. The same Wewelsburg Castle was supposed to become something like a new Valhalla, a temple for the future caste of warrior priests. With the Aztecs, everything is more complicated. The geography is too distant. But the Nazis were interested in the practice of sacrifice. They were attracted by the idea itself. Ritual death as an act of power, submission. The Ahnenerbe records mention parallels between Germanic myths and Mesoamerican mythology. Perhaps they were not looking for connections, but for justifications. They needed to prove that human life is a resource, that sacrifice can be sacred, and controllable, and Atlantis. There were no boundaries at all. There were many theories, but one of them was adopted. Supposedly, the Atlanteans were the original Aryans, a tall, white race with technology and knowledge destroyed by a catastrophe. And the mission of the Reich was to return what was lost. to rethink the fall, to build a new order from the old ruins. The Nazis did not simply believe in these stories, they made a structure out of them, an architecture of meaning to which they adjusted their power. And that is why all this is still frightening. For them, myths were not a fairy tale, but a blueprint. Ancient night bird totem. A unique artifact has been found on Pontoon Island in the St. Johns River in Florida. An ancient owl carving, the only one of its kind east of the Mississippi. The 10-foot-tall sculpture, believed to be between 700 and 800 years old, was carved from a single piece of pine and is believed to have once guarded the island's shore. Victor Ropke stumbled upon the totem while crossing the river in 1955. Today, a replica of the owl stands in the same spot on Pontoon Island, which has become a state park. The original is housed at the Fort Carolina National Museum in Jacksonville, and the fiberglass replica is a reminder of the island's ancient heritage. In addition to the owl totem, similar images of an otter and a pelican have been found here, indicating the rich spiritual and cultural life of the indigenous people. The artifact was initially attributed to the Timucua people, but there is another hypothesis, that it was created by the little-known Mayaca tribe, who spoke a different language. The function of the totem is not exactly known, but there are assumptions. Some consider it a symbol of the clan, others a religious object or a boundary mark. The details of the carving are striking. 2 eyes, human and owl, 5 claws instead of the usual 4. Perhaps the owl served as an object for shamanic rituals, because in the myths of Native Americans it is often associated with the spirit of the night and the protector of shamans. Kryptonite on Earth. Jadeite, a mineral discovered in 2006 in Serbia, attracted attention due to its striking similarity to kryptonite, the fictional substance that weakened Superman. The chemical composition of jadeite is almost identical to the kryptonite described in the film Superman Returns, including sodium, lithium, borosilicate, and hydroxide. However, unlike its fictional counterpart, jadeite does not contain fluorine, which gave kryptonite its famous green glow. This is why jadeite is white. The discovery of this mineral has attracted great interest from both scientists and science fiction fans, becoming an example of how fiction sometimes intersects with reality. Jadeite was found exclusively in the Jadar River Valley in Serbia and is of interest due to its high lithium content, which is used in the production of batteries. Factories under monasteries. I learned about this facility by accident. It is rarely written about in popular sources. The factory with the code name Bergkristall, rock crystal. It sounds beautiful, but in fact it is an underground complex hidden under a monastery in the Austrian city of St. Georgen. When researchers first went there, the radiation level was higher than normal, much higher. Rare isotopes were found in the soil, the walls are covered with a layer of lead. They were producing something there, or they were trying to hide it. Officially, it was a factory for assembling Messerschmitt jet aircraft, but the volume, depth of the shafts, and security tell a different story. They were testing something here, something that they didn't even want to show to the Allies. Researcher Andreas Sulz is one of the few who got to the archives. He believes that it was the German Manhattan Project, a nuclear program, secret, desperate, until the very end. What scares me most is not the fact itself, but how systematically they built it, under the monastery. In silence, when it was already clear that the war was lost. They still believed that they could turn it around in one move, or maybe it wasn't about winning. Maybe it was an attempt to destroy something if they couldn't capture it. The last insurance. And that's what's truly scary, not that they had the technology, but that they were ready to use it, even when it was all over. Perfume bottle. This small bottle of perfume is a true artifact from the past, which lay on the ocean floor for more than 160 years. It was found on board the Mary Celestia, a ship that sank off the coast of Bermuda. Mary Celestia is a legendary ship. It served as a blockade runner during the American Civil War and carried cargo that was illegally delivered to southern ports. In 1864, the ship sank under unclear circumstances, and since then it has rested on the sea floor, hiding its secrets. On one of the finds, you can read the inscription Piessa and Lubin, London. This is the name of a famous perfume company of the 19th century, which was famous for its exquisite aromas. This bottle is surprisingly well preserved. The glass was not damaged, and the contents still remind us of long-gone times. Even after more than a century and a half, the perfume has retained its aroma, which became a real sensation for archaeologists and perfumers. This discovery gives us a rare chance to smell the scents of that era and touch history through aroma. Elongated skulls. The mystery of the elongated skulls of Paracas continues to stir heated debate among scientists and researchers. These elongated skulls, discovered by archaeologist Julio Tello in 1928 on the Paracas Peninsula in Peru, date back approximately 3,000 years. The skulls are unusually shaped, and although similar finds have been found all over the world, from Rome to the Caucasus, the Paracas skulls are particularly surprising. It is believed that the elongated shape of the skulls was the result of deliberate manipulation, such as tying special bands or boards around the heads of infants. This process, known as cranial deformation, was common among many ancient cultures. Even today, it is practiced by some African tribes. However, it remains a mystery what exactly motivated people everywhere to engage in this practice. One popular hypothesis is that people sought to imitate the gods or guests from heaven who, according to legend, had elongated heads. Another version says that such a shape of the skull could enhance the perception of cosmic energy, which allegedly contributed to spiritual or intellectual development. The peculiarity of the Paracas skulls lies not only in their shape, but also in their volume and structure. Research shows that the volume of the skull is larger than that of ordinary people, and the structure of the bones is different. These anomalies give rise to theories about the extraterrestrial origin of the owners of such skulls. The skulls may belong to representatives of another race or hybrid creatures about which we know little yet. A brewery from the time of Egypt's first rulers. Archaeologists have discovered the world's oldest brewery located in the necropolis of Abydos, Egypt. The discovery not only sheds light on early brewing technology, but also helps us understand how resources were managed during the construction of the pyramids. The complex consists of 8 massive installations up to 20 meters long. Each of them contains 2 rows of 40 vessels that were used to heat a mixture of grain and water, the classic process of brewing beer. Scientists date the brewery to the era of Pharaoh Narmer, who is considered the founder of the First Dynasty. Dr. Adams, who led the study, called the discovery industrial-scale production and noted that it shows a high level of labor organization in ancient Egypt. The ability to manage the mass distribution of resources and organize labor allowed the Egyptians to build grandiose structures, including the pyramids. In addition, beer played an important role in rituals. The large-scale production at Abydos indicates its use in sacrifices, ceremonies, and rituals, confirming its importance in the development of Egyptian royal power. The Führer's last teeth. When I read about the Argentine bases and Hitler's escape, there was always one question left inside. Is there any direct evidence that he really died in 45? In April 2024, the FSB published a photo that answered this question. The picture shows a jaw. The remains, officially recognized as those of Hitler. They are kept in a cigarette box. 9 teeth. Everything is authentic. French forensic expert Philippe Charlier compared this jaw with X-rays from 1944. The match is absolute. Moreover, traces of cyanide were found on the metal of the dentures. This confirms the version of suicide. Poison, capsule, shot. Everything as in the official sources. It's a strange feeling. We have been looking for conspiracies, theories, legends about the escape for so many years, but everything turned out to be much simpler. No tunnels, doubles, submarines, just a jaw. A dusty archive, decades of silence. As if no one wanted this topic to have a final point, maybe because reality is not as spectacular as myth. Ancient calendar. This is a mysterious artifact from the ancient Monajdra temple in Malta, which is over 6,000 years old. Located in the Krendi area, this temple is one of the oldest religious buildings in the world. On a megalithic stone found here, we can see complex patterns that are believed to have been used to track the equinoxes. How did people of that era, without modern tools, manage to track the movement of the sun and mark key moments of the year? This question remains a mystery to archaeologists and historians. The Monajdra Temple is under the protection of UNESCO and is one of the few archaeological sites in Malta that is protected by a special tent. At first, this may seem unnecessary, as the white tent disrupts the visual integrity of the site. However, upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that this protection is necessary. Without it, the detailed carvings would gradually deteriorate under the influence of wind and rain. Fragment of a granite device.
a granite artifact from Japan with mysterious patterns, still raises many questions among scientists and researchers. This stone, found near ancient structures, puzzles with its unusual shape and precision of manufacture. Numerous depressions and lines are visible on its surface, which connect into a complex pattern, the meaning of which remains unknown. The official version suggests that the stone could have been part of a decorative element of a palace or temple. However, this hypothesis raises doubts, given the precision and symmetry of the patterns. Granite is an extremely hard material, and its processing requires complex tools that were unlikely to be available to ancient craftsmen. Even more questions arise about the technology for creating such smooth and deep depressions in such a labor-intensive material. The mystery is intensified by suggestions that the found artifact may be just a fragment of a larger structure. If its original appearance is restored, it may be possible to unravel its hidden purpose. Some alternative theories link the artifact to ancient technologies that were lost or brought in by a more advanced civilization, perhaps even of extraterrestrial origin. The skillfully executed elements on the granite could have served as part of some mechanism, a device for collecting or concentrating energy. This find reminds us of how many secrets our history holds and opens up space for fantasy and new research. Ancient inscriptions of the pharaohs in the Nile. Archaeological divers at the bottom of the murky waters of the Nile in Egypt examined algae-covered rock formations. At first glance, the stones seemed unremarkable. However, upon closer examination, scientists discovered several inscriptions associated with the ancient pharaohs. A joint team of Egyptian and French archaeologists decided to explore the ruins in the reservoir in Aswan. Under a layer of algae, they found several carvings that were at least 2,300 years old. The images ranged from drawings of ancient Egyptian pharaohs to hieroglyphs. The photo shows several well-preserved carved figures. The shapes are blurred by water and quite difficult to distinguish. One set of lettering appears to be a row of mannequin heads above two objects that resemble tombstones. These ancient inscriptions are still being studied. Archaeologists believe that these finds will help to better understand how the ancient kings ruled in those distant times. Trace of the Amber Room. I have heard about the Amber Room since childhood, the most mysterious loss of World War II. Taken away, hidden, dissolved somewhere between the fronts. There are dozens of versions. There are almost no traces left. But last year, news appeared that forced us to reconsider everything. Polish historians said that they had found a new trail, archives, evidence, old routes for moving valuables, and everything points to one thing. The Amber Room could have been transported deep into Poland. Perhaps to one of the castles, to a tunnel, to a mine. It has not been established for sure. But the fact is that a trail that was considered long dead has resurfaced. It wasn't even this that caught my attention. It was the reaction. As if someone really didn't want this topic to be raised again, there were attempts to hush it up, to challenge it, to push it aside. And the more I think about it, the more clearly I understand. The Amber Room is not just a lost artifact. It is a marker, a signal that much more disappeared in that war than we usually think, and some of it is still missing. Mysterious tablets. This golden tablet is one of many unique finds made by Serbian archaeologists in the ancient city of Viminacium, located in what is now Serbia. Viminacium was an important Roman city and military camp that flourished in the 1st to 4th centuries AD. However, discovered artifacts such as these tablets indicate that there were much older and more mysterious customs here. The tablets are engraved with strange symbols that do not resemble the usual Latin or Greek letters, and their meaning remains a mystery to researchers. These signs could be part of an unknown language, a code, or magical symbols that were used in religious rituals. Since the tablets are made of precious metals such as gold and silver, it can be assumed that they had a special meaning for those who created them. Perhaps they were amulets or charms that protected the owner or brought good luck. Despite all the efforts of archaeologists, it has not yet been possible to decipher the mysterious symbols, and they remain one of the greatest mysteries of Viminacium. Minoan Snake Goddess. The most famous symbol of the Minoan civilization remains a mystery. One of the most recognizable symbols of all Minoan culture is the snake goddess, yet archaeologists still know little about her. Given her popularity, you might think that scientists would have a good understanding of this artifact by now. But since her discovery in 1903, there has been ongoing debate about who or what she represents.
Dating to around 1600 BC, this faience figurine is rare in Minoan art, making it even more mysterious. Some archaeologists believe that she represents a goddess who is the patron of animals, while others believe that the woman depicted on the figurine has nothing to do with snakes at all. It is believed that the snakes in her hands are actually ropes and that the statue itself was significantly restored by Arthur Evans, which has led to many misconceptions and misinterpretations. Ancient necropolis of the Persian kings. Here is one of the most impressive bas-reliefs of ancient Persia, a depiction of the victory of Shahanshah Shapur I over the Roman Emperor Valerian. This monument is located in Nakhche-Rustam, the ancient necropolis of the Persian kings in Iran. In the bas-relief, Shapur I is sitting on a horse in luxurious armor, and Philip the Arab, the Roman emperor who made peace with the Persians, is kneeling before him. But most importantly, he is holding the hand of the captured Valerian. This was the only case in history when a Roman emperor was captured. After his defeat at the Battle of Edessa in 260, Valerian was never able to return. According to different versions, he died in captivity or was killed. This bas-relief is not just a historical monument, but a symbol of the greatness of the Persian Empire. He reminded everyone who passed by that the Romans, the main power of the time, had suffered a humiliating defeat. Betrayal that cost lives. The story of Anne Frank has always been a symbol of innocence destroyed for me, but recently I learned details that made this story even more terrifying. All this time, it was believed that Anne and her family were betrayed by accident. One of the neighbors, a denunciation, a coincidence. But the latest research says otherwise. In 2022, a group of historians came to the conclusion that most likely Anne Frank's hiding place was given away by the Jewish notary Arnold Vandenberg, a man who himself tried to save his family by giving out the addresses of other hiding places to the Nazis. When I learned about this, the first feeling was shock, but then came understanding. This is not just the tragedy of an individual family. This is a cross-section of the entire reality created by the Reich. A reality where fear is stronger than memory, where survival becomes betrayal, where even those who were supposed to be together end up on different sides. Anne Frank died in the Bergen-Belsen camp in February 1945, just a few weeks before the end of the war. Her diary outlived her and became one of the most honest documents of that time, because Anna wrote about simple things, dreams, grievances, hopes, about the life that was stolen from her by those who tried to build a world without pity. By the way, I was in this camp personally last year. Almost nothing is left of it. Only the foundations of the barracks in which the prisoners lived. Everything else is gone. After the liberation of the camp, the British troops burned it to the ground. No buildings, no barracks, no photographs, only empty space. Perhaps this was done intentionally, to wipe the horror from the face of the earth, or so that no one could figure it out completely, and only the pines around, tall, gloomy, they remember. They were planted back when all this was happening. I'm not trying to build a single version. Everything we've discussed is not a theory, but traces, scraps, what remained on the surface, although it should have disappeared. The Nazis were not just looking for weapons. They wanted power that would look like a continuation of something ancient, almost eternal. What they created went beyond war. In symbols, artifacts, technologies, they tried to rewrite reality itself. I don't know how much of this was a game, how much was conviction, and how much fear. But I know one thing. All this cannot be simply forgotten, because too much of it feels like it's coming back, only under different names. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.